If we were writing all the same kind of songs, but we're all writing different songs, so it keeps us interested. So that was interesting enough for us to carry on.
Asterisk walked back on stage, transformed. He was wearing a magnificent red velvet cloak trimmed with fake ermine and a golden crown. A replica of the St. Edward's coronation crown. It was Freddie's idea. Of course, he'd told his costume designer, "I'd like a crown and a cloak." Don't laugh. I just think it would work. As he paraded across the stage like a king surveying his kingdom, he spoke to the adoring crowd one last time. His words, in hindsight, are incredibly poignant. "I think most of you know this is the last stop on our tour, end. Such a beautiful way to end it. I mean, look at the lot of you," he said, his voice full of affection. Then, with a classic Freddie touch, he added, "I might also add that this has been the best European tour for us. Thanks to all you fuckers out there." He raised his crown in a final, triumphant salute, wished them good night, and then he was gone. This final image for the King of Queen, bidding farewell, became one of the most iconic of his career. It was the perfect ending. But what happened next was another bizarre detail that the crowds missed completely. Normally, the end of a huge tour means a massive backstage party. But not this time. The mood was somber, crushed by the news of the fan's death. And Freddie, the ultimate party host, was nowhere to be found. He just vanished. Immediately after walking off stage, he slipped away from the chaos, avoided the press and crew, and was flown by helicopter back to the solitude of his London home. This wasn't Freddie. Freddie lived for the post-show celebration and the adoration. His vanishing act was a silent, powerful statement. Brian May later recalled Freddie saying something like, "Oh, I can't fucking do this anymore, my whole body's racked with pain." But, as May said, they didn't take it seriously, assuming it was just end-of-tour fatigue. The fans, stuck in traffic on their way home, were still buzzing from the show, replaying the hits in their heads. They had no idea that the king who had just held them in the palm of his hand had already abdicated the throne. He had given his all, one last time, and now he was retreating from the world he had just commanded so completely. The showman had left the building for good. Here's one of the most baffling parts of the story. For an event of this size and historical importance, no official professional video of the full concert exists. For a band as visual as Queen, the fact that no one properly filmed their final show with Freddie is almost unbelievable. The Wembley Stadium shows from that same tour were professionally filmed and released as the iconic Live at Wembley '86. So why not Neb? The official reason is a bit murky. Some say that after the expensive filming at Wembley, the band's management just didn't want to pay to do it all over again. Henry Lytton-Cabold, whose family owns the Nebworth estate, later expressed his disbelief. "Can you believe that on Freddie Mercury's last concert, The Great Showman, no one actually pressed record? As a result, this monumental night only exists in pieces. There are snippets of pro footage from news clips and documentaries. The most complete version is a grainy amateur bootleg, shot by a fan pointing a VHS camera at one of the giant screens. The audio that was eventually released on the Live Magic album was heavily edited, with bits from other concerts spliced in. This lack of a definitive record has only fueled the mythology of Nebworth. It's now a ghost of a concert, a legendary moment that can never be fully revisited. It really shows you the mindset back then. No one, not even the band, grasped the finality of that night. If they had known this was Freddie's last stand, you can bet every single second would have been meticulously documented. But they didn't know. They thought it was just the end of another tour, not the end of an era. And so, one of the most important concerts in rock history was allowed to fade into time. When the last notes of God Save the Queen faded out, 120,000 fans thought they had just seen the end of another great tour. They went home believing there would be another album, another tours, another chance. They had no idea they had just witnessed the end of an era. As Freddie retreated from public life and the tragic truth of his illness became known, the Nebworth concert took on a whole new meaning. When you put all the pieces together, Freddie's physical struggle, his dark jokes, John Deacon's rage, and Freddie's sudden disappearance, a new, heartbreaking picture emerges. This wasn't just another show, it was an unspoken farewell. Every ounce of energy Freddie used on that stage was his final gift to his fans. As his roadie Peter Hinz put it, he was saying goodbye without saying a word. "For some reason, I just felt it would be the last show," Hinz recalled. "I have no evidence, just a feeling." Freddie pushed his body to its absolute limit, not just for one night, but for an entire tour, all while fighting a devastating disease. He would go on to record 2 more incredible albums with Queen, but his days as a live performer were over. The physical toll was just too great. Nebworth is the ultimate testament to Freddie Mercury's strength and his love for his fans. He could have canceled, but he chose to walk onto that stage, to soak up the love of 120,000 people, and to give it all back, one last time. He left everything he had on that stage. The fans saw a king in his castle, a rock god at the peak of his power. What they missed was the mortal man behind the crown, performing an act of superhuman will. delivering his own eulogy the only way he knew how, with a microphone in his hand and a crowd at his feet. It was a magic show, and the greatest trick of all was that no one saw him disappear. If you were captivated by the hidden story of Freddie Mercury's final performance, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more deep dives into the lives of music's greatest legends. We uncover the stories you've never heard, and now we want to hear from you. What's a Queen song or memory that means the world to you? Drop it in the comments below. Let's keep the magic alive together. On August 9, 1986, in a sprawling English park, history was being made. But no one in the massive crowd of 120,000 could have possibly known it. They were a sea of humanity, packed together for one reason: to see Queen, a band at the absolute peak of their power. Just a year after conquering the world at Live Aid, they were finishing their biggest, most spectacular tours ever, the Magic Tour. And at the center of it all, of course, was Freddie Mercury. To 120,000 pairs of eyes, he was a god, a force of nature. They saw the strut, they heard the voice, they felt the incredible energy. But what they didn't see were the secrets hiding in plain sight. They didn't see the physical pain he was pushing through with every single note, or the quiet, ominous whispers backstage. They didn't see the band's quietest member have a violent, shocking outburst, fueled by pressure and a looming, unspoken dread. And they certainly didn't know that a horrific tragedy would unfold in the crowd, casting a dark shadow over the whole event. What if the biggest party of the year was actually a quiet, heartbreaking goodbye? This is the untold story of Freddie Mercury's final concert. A night that, for the audience, was pure magic, but for the band, was an agonizing farewell. It was without a doubt the biggest tour of their lives. As drummer Roger Taylor put it, Queen's 1986 Magic Tour was a production that made Ben-Hur look like the Muppets. After their career-redefining performance at Live Aid in 1985, the band was on fire. For a moment, they were the biggest band in the world, and they wanted a show to match. The tour was a traveling city of rock and roll, grossing over £11 million and playing to more than 400,000 fans across Europe. But the finale had to be the grandest of them all. A massive outdoor show at Knebworth Park. The logistics were insane. The stage was a colossal 160 feet wide, with two 40-foot runways for Freddie to command the space. A giant 20-foot video screen made sure no one missed a thing. The whole setup needed 8 miles of cabling and its own generator. And the sound system was so powerful it sparked noise complaints from villages miles away. To make their entrance, the band didn't bother with limos. They arrived in a helicopter custom painted with the artwork from their new album, A Kind of Magic. From the air, they saw the audience stretching out like a living ocean. For the fans on the ground, the feeling was electric. This wasn't just another concert, it was a pilgrimage. They came expecting a party, a night of anthems that had become the soundtrack to their lives. And Queen delivered beyond their wildest dreams. But behind the curtain of this perfect summer day, a totally different story was unfolding, one of pain, tension, and a creeping sense of finality that only a handful of people knew. While 120,000 fans saw a swaggering, unstoppable frontman, they were actually watching an act of sheer willpower over agony. By the summer of 1986, Freddie Mercury was already fighting a silent war inside his own body. He wouldn't get his official AIDS diagnosis until the following year. But the symptoms were starting to appear, and a grueling stadium tour was taking a serious toll. His health was a huge concern for the inner circle. He was reportedly suffering from throat problems, a nightmare for any singer, let alone one facing a 2-hour set of Queen's demanding hits. Stories have circulated for years that his doctor flat out told him not to perform, fearing permanent damage to his vocal cords. But for Freddie, canceling on the fans who'd traveled from all over was unthinkable. The show had to go on. The band and crew were on edge, knowing Freddie was pushing his limits. But he was determined to give the audience the full experience, using his incredible stagecraft to hide any sign of weakness. For most of the night, the crowd had no idea. There were, however, tiny moments where the mask slipped. During the iconic duet Under Pressure, his voice, usually an unstoppable force, cracked on a high note. For anyone else, it would have been a mistake. For Freddie, it was an opportunity. Without missing a beat, he turned the microphone to the audience, transforming his personal struggle into a moment of unity, letting their voices carry him. The crowd, lost in the moment, sang their hearts out, having no idea they were helping their hero cross the finish line. This defiance was pure Freddie, but it was also fueled by a sense of borrowed time. He was starting to confront his own mortality, often in his own dark, witty way. Just weeks earlier, he'd told an interviewer he'd play in Budapest again, if I'm still alive. Brian May later recalled Freddie quipping after a small argument, "Well, I won't always be here to do this." On another occasion, May remembered Freddie saying, "I'm not going to be doing this forever. This is probably the last time." At the time, his bandmates brushed these comments off as Freddie's typical end-of-tour drama. In hindsight, they were chillingly prophetic. They were glimpses into the mind of a man who knew his time on stage was running out. The fans at Knebworth saw a rock god. They didn't see the man in pain, the man secretly grappling with the terrifying reality that his body was betraying him. They were watching a triumph, but it was a triumph born from a desperate, private struggle. As the sun set over Knebworth Park, Queen launched into one of their most emotional anthems, Who Wants to Live Forever. With its sweeping orchestra and lyrics about love and loss, the song always packed a punch. But on this night, it became linked to a real-life tragedy unfolding in the massive crowd. Somewhere in that dense audience, a 21-year-old fan named Thomas McGuigan was caught in a fight. In the chaos, he was fatally stabbed. The sheer size of the crowd, the very thing that made the event so epic, suddenly became a deadly obstacle. Paramedics fought to reach him, but their path was blocked by an impenetrable wall of 120,000 people. By the time they got there, it was too late. While Freddie sang about the sorrow of immortality, a young life was violently ended. On stage, lost in the performance, the band knew nothing about the horror. Just a few hundred feet away, they played on, pouring every ounce of energy into hit after hit, completely unaware. It was only after they took their final bows that the devastating news reached them backstage. The triumphant feeling of finishing a massive tour vanished instantly, replaced by shock and sadness. The celebration they'd earned was now tainted by a senseless act of violence. The knowledge that a fan had died during their show, especially during a song with such somber lyrics, was a crushing blow. This tragic event added a grim, dark irony to the night. A concert meant to celebrate life was now forever marked by death. For those who later learned what happened, the lyrics, "There's no time for us, there's no place for us," took on a chilling new meaning, a heartbreaking epitaph for a night that ended in tragedy. Of all the members of Queen, bassist John Deacon was the quiet one. He was the stoic, reliable anchor of the band, a calm presence who always avoided the drama. That's why what he did at Knebworth was so completely shocking. A bizarre moment that showed the emotional turmoil boiling just under the surface. Throughout the Magic Tour, people close to the band noticed a change in Deacon. He seemed more on edge. Roadie Peter Hintz later said, "John acted strangely on that tour. He was doing stuff that was out of character." Roger Taylor also noted that Deacon was going through a tough time and had become quite thirsty. Apparently, Deacon had a small cocktail bar set up behind his amps, and his roadies kept him supplied with vodka throughout the shows. This simmering tension finally exploded at Knebworth. It's a moment that has become the stuff of Queen legend. After the band performed the crowd-unifying anthem Radio Gaga, Deacon did something unthinkable. He walked over to his beloved bass guitar and, in a sudden fit of rage, smashed it into his amplifier before throwing it to the ground. This wasn't theatrical, like a punk rocker smashing a cheap guitar. This was a raw, ugly display of fury from the most reserved man in the band. Why did he do it? The real reason remains a mystery. Some think it was the crushing stress of the tour mixed with personal problems. Others believe it was his reaction to the awful news about the fan's death. A more mundane theory suggested he was angry about a custom paint job on his bass. But to those who knew him, the outburst was deeply unsettling. He wasn't pissed off at his gear. He wasn't pissed off at me. I don't know what it was. Roadie Peter Hintz recalled. This moment of rage was a major crack in the band's unified front. While Freddie was pushing through physical pain, John was fighting his own internal battles. In retrospect, this outburst looks like a sign that he was already done. The pressure, the fame, the lifestyle, it had all become too much. The fans cheering for an encore saw for rock legends taking a bow, but they had no idea that one of them had just shattered. The end of the show was pure spectacle. As Brian May played a soaring guitar version of God Save the Queen, Freddie Mercury